You guys ready to talk about some more AI? So I'm going to talk, I'm Bill. I work for a software company here in town. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we've taken a lot of the ideas today and a lot of the ideas we heard from David this morning and several of the talks, Mikkel, and the one we just heard, and how we've actually been using this in our team now we're getting close to about a year of really seriously trying to use AI to accelerate what we're doing to engineer the product. So with that, my talk's kind of got three pieces. I want to kind of tell you first just the story quickly of where we started, how we got to where we are today, and then go into some of the change that we had to deal with, some of the challenges of dealing with real-world people, real-world engineers with opinions, right? We don't have opinions. And then talk about the future. So the first thing is our journey. The first time I ever really tried working with an LLM was I went to Hugging Face, and this has been like 4 years ago. It was early. I was like, what the heck is this? I tried interacting with an LLM. I don't think it was instruct-tuned, so it was very difficult to get anything of value. And so I said, okay, there's nothing here that we can use today. So sad case. But then, of course, like many of you, GitHub Copilot came out. We started using it, and it looked promising, right? But it was really just still very limited. And then, as David mentioned this morning, I forgot how he worded it, sort of the day of reckoning when ChatGPT came out. It was very exciting. However, it still couldn't write code, not good code anyway, and not consistently. And so that was very challenging. Then we tried Claude, and Claude was a lot better. Claude's still really good. And we had more success with Claude. At some point, we had a chat with one of the local developers here, Trent, and he showed us what he was doing with projects. So we started trying projects, but we ran into some limitations pretty quick. One of the things that Claude projects had was you could only give it so much context, it could only index so many files. It was very limited. So we had already been kind of messing around with this new thing that everybody's talking about, Cursor, and so we kind of said, hey, maybe we should really try Cursor and commit to that. So that's what we did. And that was nearly a year ago when we were kind of messing around with this. We got serious with Cursor, I want to say about September of last year. And we've been using it extensively since then. It's a huge challenge to go through changing the way we were doing things. And so I'll talk about some of those experiences. So now, just want to kind of walk through our experience. What were some of the challenges that we faced? One is we weren't doing vibe coding with Lovable or V0 or anything like that. Of course, those things didn't exist. But we also weren't doing greenfield development. We had a larger monolithic app. We had opinions about what we were doing, how we were doing it, existing code base. We needed to use the LLM to help us extend and work on this existing code base. So that created a significant amount of complexity we had to deal with, and that was certainly a challenge. It's still a challenge. Integrating with human team. It wasn't just one engineer working in silo, which is a lot of what we hear stories about using AI to write code is you're kind of like, hey, you can have your whole team and build everything. But we have a product person, we have a CEO, we have QA, we have all these people that are stakeholders that we've got to deal with to ship things. So that adds a level of collaboration that we need to deal with. And then similarly to everybody else, maintaining code quality, that was a key concern of the engineering team. Hey, we don't want to give up control. We don't want to let this wacko LLM write wacko code and break things. And then we also wanted to go fast still. And so the reason we were kind of doing this is how can we go faster? But when you start using the LLMs, especially Copilot, sometimes, but even with cursor, it's awkward. It's slow. You're like going, hey, why am I doing this? This is completely stupid. I'm wasting a lot of time. I could just write this code. And your feeling is, hey, let's just go fix it and go write the code. And so you have to kind of work through that problem because it's really hard to not just give up and go do it yourself. Another problem is we actually had one engineer who's not on NeoVim, he's not on Vim, he's on pre-Vim. He uses VI, which is, you couldn't use some of these tools very easily. So we had to get people off the tools they're using, switch from VS Code, VI, switch over to Cursor, which is a new tool, right? So that's a challenge to get engineers just to simply give up what they're comfortable with, what they've configured, and have it, dialed into the way they work, to using something that now they have to go figure it all out again. So some of the things that helped us make this change possible, and I feel like I'm talking really fast, but I timed myself last night, and I was like, I got a lot to cover. So I'm trying to make sure I cover it all, and we get through it all. I've got a lot. I just want to impart as much as I can to you guys, and we'll hopefully have some time for questions. But anyway, things that helped us. This is probably the most important point, and I think I just heard it in the last talk similarly. This idea from switching our engineering team's mindset from thinking of AI and LLMs as a way to assist me in writing code or doing engineering to actually using the LLM, the AI first. And what I mean by that is we start with the LLM. We are directing the LLM. The LLM writes the code. We review the code. We give it direction back, and we keep going again and again. So we try to get a one-shot in there, and that's our goal. We don't always do that, but we are more and more writing less and less code, and the AI is pretty much writing as much of the code as we can possibly get it to write. It's a big shift, crazy shift, not easy. It's like trying to get your team to go from SVN to Git when they just got on SVN. And they're like, hey, this version control stuff's awesome. Why do we want to change? Also, we were permitted to fail. So we were in a culture, in a company where it was okay if we went a little slower. So we had time to invest and try to figure out how do we make this work. We were not under the gun to say, hey, you've got to get everything shipped fast. We could fail a little bit. So that's important. And the CEO was driving this. So I had Josh, who was our CEO at QuantHub, really demanding that we figure out this problem and amplify our engineering team. That really helped us move way faster and get ahead of, I've tried to hire engineers recently, and I keep hitting engineer after engineer, and I'm like, man, they're not where we need them to be. And even today, some of the things I disagree with some of the things I've heard in these talks because I've got a different experience and different opinion. So anyway, those things help drive us. So now I just want to mention a few things about just general small things. Some of these things may be things you guys know. They may be obvious. They may not be. I don't know. But I'm just going to try to hit the highlights of some things we've learned. So things to know about LLMs. They're linguistic. We've seen this in several of the talks. This is an important concept to understand, is they understand language. So I'll give you an example. They understand semantics, and we've heard, like in David's talk, talking about like why TypeScript's the right language, because it's a semantically relevant language in the way it's written. But similarly, one problem we have is writing test questions. So if we take a small chunk of text and we ask the LLM to say, give me the propositions for that text. Well, propositions means propositional logic, and it can analyze that bit of text, break it down into truthful statements, Boolean type statements of truth, and those are called propositions. That's a concept in semantics. If you understand linguistics and semantics, you can better interact with these models and do more powerful things. You don't even need an instruct-tuned model to get good results when you actually do something like ask it for propositions. So understanding how these models work is really important. So they're linguistic. They complete text. Again, you don't have to have an instruct-tuned model to have them complete things. This is the basics of how they work. The instruct-tuned models, then the ones you can have conversations with, which is great, but in general, that's a good concept to know. And they depend on the training data, so the different amount of data that they're trained on really impacts what's possible. And so you can, if you're downloading your own models, you can look at how large they are, how much RAM they take for different sizes of training data. But the other thing that does is it creates a problem for you. Because when you want to write code, they have all of this data, and you need to focus them on the one little piece that you care about. And you want to make sure they're not dealing with all this other irrelevant data. Context windows, highly limit them. Gemini 2.5 Pro has a huge context window, which makes a lot of things possible. So understanding how that impacts and constrains what you're doing with an LLM is important. So again, just basics. Which model should you be using? Now I'm going to talk about some opinions. I think the last speaker said we're opinionated developers. So we would recommend that we use Claude 4 Sonnet almost exclusively and Gemini 2.5 Pro. I mean, those are the two key models we use to write code. Codex is another model from OpenAI that we haven't used as much. They've just released a new tool in the last couple of weeks, so I haven't used that very much. That's still something to look at, but these two models are key. Which models should you avoid? Deep reasoning models. Using a deep reasoning model is slow. You don't get as much out of it. Tried OpenAI's GPT Pro account. It really is just slow, and maybe writes equally good code. It's not that great for the amount of time it takes. And then self-hosting models with a llama. While I hear a lot of people, go get their hardware, go down, host their own models. That's interesting. I think that from a serious, trying to get real work done, that to me is playing. It's having fun, it's interesting, experimenting with what's possible, what people are doing out there with these different models. It's fun, but it doesn't help us get things done. And we're a real team, real startup, limited runway. We've got to get stuff done. We've got to ship code. And so the paid models are just vastly, vastly more powerful and better. So we don't have the constraint of worrying about cost. We'll pay for whatever we need. Which tools should you use? Number one, Cursor. Cursor with Claude 4 Sonnet is the main go-to that we use. We've tried other things. Claude, part of our team uses some Claude for different things. Claude is nice because they have fine-tuned for an HTML page. So if you want to just generate a quick HTML page, they can do that quick. If you want to do React components, they can do that. You can go read the docs on Claude and see what all they've been fine-tuned to do. Claude Code's also interesting because it's a CLI tool, and it's pretty interesting as well, but our go-to is Cursor. And again, I'll mention Codex. That's another tool that's similar to Claude Code, but it's fairly new. What should you avoid? We canceled our GitHub Copilot accounts. We don't use that at all. It took after a few months of nobody using it, we just turned them off. And then ChatGPT. We don't use ChatGPT or any of the OpenAI models. Again, Codex looks promising, but just in general, and I'm talking about writing code. I use ChatGPT constantly, but not to write code. I will lean on Claude if I'm just going to have a conversation about code or something technical. I'll get in Cursor and use Claude Sonnet 4 to actually write code, or Gemini 2.5 Pro. So again, just real practical experiences. Best practices, I just heard this, managing context is number one. If you understand how to manage context, you can get way more out of the models in writing code. You have a way better experience. That was the problem I mentioned with Claude projects, is that we couldn't really manage the context well. And so that created challenges. Using LLMs to write prompts. So you can go and use Claude to write the prompt for Cursor. That was one way when we started working with Cursor. We would go to Claude or ChatGPT, would say, hey, here's what we're trying to do. Here's our problem. Write a prompt for Cursor, right? And then we'd copy that, paste it into Cursor, have Cursor try to do a one-shot to write the feature, write the component, whatever it was that we were trying to accomplish. That is still a useful tool to know if you don't use that. Aspire for one-shots. We're constantly trying to get as much done with one prompt as possible. Our best prompt is implement this feature. That's where we've gotten to today. We actually define all the context, implement this feature, and it goes builds everything for us. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. Restore and try again. So another thing that we've hit is when we ask the LM to do something, if it doesn't do what we want, we go back. Sometimes you can just run the exact same prompt a second time and get the result you're looking for. But we also just start fresh with a new window constantly. We don't just linger in the same conversation forever. Again, basic stuff, but not everybody's aware of those things. Delete the chat history. So if you're in Cursor, Cursor's keeping a history of every chat. And so it's very useful. Sometimes that's useful. Sometimes it gets in the way. If you're having bad results, you may need to go delete the entire history. Another thing I didn't mention, another thing is use Cursor's versioning. So while we have version control, we also have, Cursor has a feature where it's versioning as you're having a conversation and it's making changes. So you can go review those changes and jump back a few. So that's a very useful tool if you don't know about it. And similarly, just keep Cursor updated. They're updating it constantly, at least once a week almost. Our results, I would say, and this is just anecdotal, but it's similar to what we just heard if you were in the last talk. I would say that from where we were a year ago to where we are today, that each engineer is getting about 2 times the output of where we were before we adopted this different way of working. More specific metrics, our current cycle time right now, if we remove our QA is kind of a bottleneck for us, is sub 2 days. So that means from the time we start working on an issue to the time we close that issue, is less than 2 days. And we're shipping code as of looking at like the past 30 days of data 2.5 times per day with a team of 4 engineers. Our failure rate in the last 30 days is 0, and we've had 76 deployments. So just to kind of give you a sense of how often we're deploying, how much, and the success. And again, this is where we're writing code with letting the LM write the code first, and we're directing it. So a little bit about our process. Sort of the way I would describe this process, we kind of adopted this after Cursor rules came out, which was the end of February. So this was like early March when we started experimenting with how to do this. Creating the context. So managing context is critical. And so the 3 pieces of that is defining the team, or some people call these the agents. And I'll talk about what that means in a sec. Defining sort of the concepts of the space that you're working in, the domain space. So in our case, the software engineering concepts, and then the processes, implementing context around the processes. So if I did this to kind of describe how we're using Cursor and how it's structured. We use an agile extreme process. Cursor is our primary IDE, and then we've integrated that with our issue tracker, which is GitLab Issues. That's also, of course, our repo. And then we have our human team that's interacting with the issue tracker to kind of move things along through the process. So in Cursor, we've created context in several different ways. One is we've used Cursor rules, which are MDC files, which are, I believe, Markdown with content is what that stands for. If anybody knows, that's 100% confident what that means. I think that's what it means. It's a Markdown file with YAML at the top. YAML front matter. But anyway, that's a cursor-specific feature where cursor can use these rules to create context based on the prompt that you're asking. So if you ask certain things, those rules kick in. Then when I talked about creating the team, this is sort of the agents. Right now we have a software engineer on our team, which is, we're a Rails app. So if you're familiar with Rails, the creator of Rails is DHH. So our software engineer is DHH. And it could be anybody we wanted, right? We could name them whatever. We did the same thing with a UX designer. We focus on assessments. So a psychometrician is somebody who understands how to design assessments like the ACT. So we need that expertise. Instructional design, we have an education product. And then, of course, we got the product person as well. So these are all markdown files that represent a skill set and a set of context around that skill set that is critical to our process. And then we created templates to help implement our process. For the way we work is we have feature cards, we have milestones, feature cards, chores, bugs. So we create templates for all of that. And then we actually have Cursor write those cards, create the milestone, create the feature cards, mostly it's milestones and features, and then we write the code using those as the context. So we'll go through and create all the documents using this team and the rules that define how Cursor should tap different areas of knowledge to create the milestone, the description of what we're trying to accomplish, write the actual individual features, and then we have this markdown file that's a feature card, and we say, hey, implement this feature. And it then has all of the expertise that we've given context, and then the specific information it needs in that card to implement the feature. That's how we've been able to have a lot of success. The code base, of course, is there as well. It's a Rails app with Vue components. We're not doing React, so if you know much about Rails, but we have some JavaScript, some HTML with embedded Ruby templates and Tailwind, so pretty standard stuff. The other thing that I mentioned is that when we started putting our story cards in the repo, that was useful in writing prompts, right? Because now we've got the context for what we're trying to do. But we needed like QA to be able to know we delivered it. So we wrote some shell scripts, which we could convert to an MCP server now, but we haven't done that yet. But that allows us to sync these cards that are markdown cards with a GitLab issue, and that way QA can move those things along. So what's up next? What are some of the things we're thinking about? First, reality check. It's not perfect. We're still pull our hair out sometimes. We're still frustrating. We're still cursing at Cursor, right, and the LLMs. It can be frustrating sometimes, but we've stayed committed, and we keep working through this. We think the results are definitely worth it, and so we continue to plow forward. So some of the to-dos that we constantly are doing, we're always monitoring the models and keeping track of, is there a new model that we need to try, see if it's better. The latest thing is, again, a Gemini 2.5 Pro, using that, and then, of course, Codex. Monitoring the tools. I mean, I've tried Windsurf. I've tried, pretty much anything and everything I'm installing and trying it. And I haven't found anything better than Cursor yet. If I do, I'll abandon Cursor. Leveraging MCP servers, that's a very powerful way to add a lot more ability to your interactions. So pretty much anything you can imagine you could do in the shell, you can write an MCP server and then now have a conversation with the LLM in Cursor and have it go do those tasks for you. So there's a lot of things that are possible there. We haven't had time to go do a whole lot with that yet, but that's like the edge of what you'll see. If you go search for MCP servers, there's a lot of people that have already published a lot that you can just go grab one and interact with GitLab, for example. Checklists. I'll mention a project at the end that's similar to our process of what we're doing, but one thing we haven't added in to that context is having checklists. So we could have QA be more automated and have it go, run through a checklist for us. We've done a little bit of adding product strategy and documents in, but we need to get that more formalized. And then improving QA. Again, the checklist will help us do that. Our ultimate vision of where we want to get to is where our engineers are directing the LLMs, where we're teams of agents. They're writing the code. They're actually opening merge requests. We're reviewing that, giving comments back and direction. The LLM's correcting that, submitting a change. We're reviewing it, and then we're shipping that. That's ultimately where we want to be. We're not quite there. I mean, we're doing the merge requests and all that repetitive labor right now, but we really need to figure out how to automate that more. Some resources. I'll just mention two resources. This guy, his name's Brian. I don't remember his last name. And this is pretty new. Like maybe 2 weeks ago, he opened up this new GitHub repo. So this is on GitHub. This is BMAD method. It's his repo. He was made a comment somewhere in Cursor's community that led me down the path of using Cursor rules. But he's got some YouTube videos, and he's really taken an entire framework to work with Windsurf, work with Claude Code, work with Cursor. You can kind of install his system. He's got his own version of Agile, and he's built it all around his methodology and workflow. But the ideas and the concepts that he's doing are very useful. They're exactly what we're doing. Figuring out how do you define agents, how do you create context, how do you not let the LLM get off the rails and keep it focused. Another useful book, and this is more about AI engineering. It's an AI engineering book by Obi Fernandez. But the first half of the book is just an introduction to LLMs in general and all the concepts and how they work. It's a very useful book when I read it to really understand, like I mentioned earlier, the linguistics and the semantics. Some of those ideas I picked up as I was reading his book. So with that, any questions? I don't know if I have any more time. I think maybe a few minutes. 2 minutes, 2 questions.
So are your developers happy still, basically?
We're miserable.
I mean, 'cause it sounds like, they're basically just like glorified code reviewers.
Not really. I would debate that. I would say we are still, in control. The LLM is just, it's doing what we want, but we're not having to type out line by line code. So, yes, we're all very happy. But as you're saying, it was a challenge to change from that mindset of where I'm giving up control. I like writing this code. It is fun to write the code, and so you're giving up a lot, and that is very hard.
So along those lines, and this is something that has really been concerning me or puzzling me. So you have senior engineers that are doing this, and they're able to get more out of the model because of all of the infrastructure you put around it, which means you're probably not hiring as many junior devs. What happens when we don't have a pipeline to build senior devs because we're not hiring junior devs and coaching them along the way in the future?
Well, we have one very senior dev. There's 4 of us, including me, so we have one senior engineer. We have another engineer who we brought on as an intern. She's been there at the company now 4 years, so she's now mid-level engineer and very successful. And then we have a brand new graduate from UA's computer science program who's junior engineer, just joined the team. They're all performing at a high level, and the new engineer has just fit in, and it's just our culture and process now. So it's radically different, right? There's a lot to give up. It's very hard. Like a year ago, I had some of the same concerns. I was like, oh, this can't do that. But it's really changed drastically.
I'm just curious what the long-term ramifications to the developer.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be as serious as as we think. I mean, I think those are, I mean, from my experience, I mean, junior developer, we still have to have, we're having the conversations more about what do we name things? What's the right name for this model? How do we structure this, this data model? Those are the kinds of conversations we spend more time talking about, not, hey, this method over here should be refactored this way. I mean, we might talk about that too, but it's more about architectural decisions and important things that we're tending to have more conversations around, which is a good thing, right? I mean, we're elevating the level of where the team's operating at. It's like we got a bunch of junior architects, right?
Very quickly, have you observed any code quality differences between Sonnet 4 and Claude Code? Understanding that they use the same back end, but
I haven't.
Okay.
But I haven't used Claude Code enough to really tell you for sure. But I think they use the same model.
Are you writing any unit tests in AI? So is Cursor writing unit tests as it's developing?
Yes, it writes our tests as well.
Okay.
We use RSpec and we have integration tests, unit tests.
Great. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.